Yeah? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to August 21st meeting of the Berkeley School Board. And if you want to follow along online on the agenda, you can do so on your phone, or you can borrow a computer from Ms. Chidas. I'd like to remind everybody our board meeting is broadcast live on YouTube. This means that our meetings and anything captured on video will be archived online and will be online forever. Will now call the open session of tonight's meeting in order at 7:30. For the record, the closed session began at 6 o'clock. Well, should we go to approve the agenda? Or,
Sure. We can do
we're
that.
just waiting for Khadijah.
We can do the agenda. Okay, so we need to pull, Liz, which is it, the June 12th minutes? Yeah. Okay, we need to pull for the 11.11 from the consent calendar.
There was another one.
And then Julie.
Yeah, I wanted to pull 11.6
Okay.
for discussion before we vote on it.
So for action.
11.
Yeah, pull it for action.
Okay.
And Julie?
I need to recuse myself on the contracts.
The contract's 11.5, I think it's.
Yeah, I think it's
No,
11.5. It's the contract for the super science.
11.2, right?
Yeah, contracts and purchase orders.
So we'll pull that for action too. And 11.11, we're pulling all together. Okay, I'll move to approve the agenda with 11.2 and 11.6 pulled for action and 11.11 pulled all together.
Okay, motion by Director Albert, second by Director Appel, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, you can do now a roll call for us, please.
Director Julie Sinai.
Here.
Director Judy Appel. Here. Director Estelle Hemp.
Present.
Director Khadijah Brown.
Present.
Vice President Ty Alper.
Present.
President Beatriz Leiva Cutler.
Presente. I'd like to go back to reporting from closed session. Yes, and so we started at 6 o'clock, and on item 3.1.1, on claim number DSC 15033595, we received an update from legal counsel and gave direction. On item 3.21, on Berkeley Federation of Teachers, we received an update on negotiations and also gave directions. Sorry, let me type this up. Okay, and so now we'll return to be approved, report our closed session. So now we'll hear from our public. Tom Kelly.
Good evening. Tom Kelly. I'm here to express my support for the bond measure. I think it's item 13 tonight. And specifically, my personal interest is in the solar element. Some of you may know that my organization, Kyoto USA, actually developed the first solar master plan for Berkeley Unified School District in 2011. And we updated again in 2015. So I'm just glad to see that this proposed bond will take care of getting solar on the rest of the schools. And I hope we look at some of the new technology that's available in terms of storage, for example, and some of the other things that might be beneficial for the school district in the future. So thanks very much.
We have union comments, committee comments, board member and superintendent comments. Who wants to start? Do we do popcorn? Okay, who wants to go first? Okay, I'll go first. I'll go first. Today we went, the superintendent and myself and our supervisor of Equity and Family Engagement and several of our family specialists went to workshop and giving us information and resources on supporting immigrant and refugee families in our school districts. We heard about several resources that we can utilize, several practices that we can review, and also reviewing our own policy to see with the things that have changed since we implemented, if there's a similarity. Also, that we distribute annually. So I was really happy to see that and to have that opportunity. And I'm sure other board members will say it, but this is about Saturday, our K to college school supplies giveaway at San Pablo Park, correct? So there'll be more information that'll be going out. Thank you. Director, student director?
Hi. So I recently was talking to Dr. Stevens, and with the potential of maybe kind of expanding on what we discuss and decide on in the boardroom, and the things we may move forward with in the future. So hopefully I'll be able to take on that project along with the help of other board members or maybe even other students. So thank you.
Director Bell?
I'll be brief. I just wanted to say that this was the first week of school, and I hope that all of the students had a good first week and are having a good first week of school, and that our employees are also enjoying being back at school. And I don't know how others feel, but for me, it's always exciting when kids start, and it brings our city alive. And so let's hope for the best year possible.
Also, welcome back to school, everybody. It's very exciting to see. I live right around the corner from Thousand Oaks, so the whole neighborhood is alive in a whole different way, so it's very exciting. I want to announce that I have established my office hours for this year, and they will be the third Sunday of the month from 3:30 to 5, starting on October 20th. And they'll be at Cafe Layla, which is at 1724 San Pablo Avenue. I also want to thank the superintendent for the information item, extending the timeline in the process for looking at middle school assignment. There's been a lot of emails and a lot of concern among the community around us not rushing to decisions, and so I want to thank you for really developing a thorough process that will be engaging of the school community as well as the elementary feeder programs and the community at large. And I also wanted to say at this very moment in City Hall, the Homeless Service Panel of Experts is talking about priorities for homeless services right now. And our manager of student support services, I believe, is there and advocating for our families who are finding themselves homeless right now, whether they be living in tents or RVs or couch surfing. And we really hope that the recommendation comes out of the commission to set a priority and to set a dedication of funds for our homeless families.
Director, any other? No? Okay, thank you. So we're moving really quick. So now we have board member comments. Now we'll approve the consent. Oh, Dr. Stevens.
Thank you for thinking of me.
I'm sorry, late. I'm just trying to move down the agenda,
You're
right?
in a hurry tonight. I appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brent Stevens, the superintendent. I had the privilege of visiting many of our schools last week during the opening days of the school year. I want to extend a special thank you to all of the BUSD staff who worked so hard to create welcoming learning environment for our students on that very first day. So most certainly that includes all of the staff who worked throughout the summer to clean our buildings. I'd love to share a few stats. This is sort of bragging rights for some of our folks in maintenance and custodial. So here they are. Imagine this. The custodial staff this summer cleaned and scrubbed a total of 1,472,000 square feet of our buildings this summer. Wow. Really quite a remarkable achievement. Hats off to you and your team. Maintenance staff this summer was able to complete a total of 198 special projects and then 37 special projects projects were completed this summer by the grounds department, so kudos to all of them. And then I also want to extend a special thank you and welcome back to all of our classified staff, including our instructional assistants, who are busy now serving students in classrooms throughout the district. A few extra thank yous. Although it won't be known to many people, the business service team has been very hard at work to prepare materials both for this evening's presentation and for the state. So those folks have been working a number of weekends to close the book. So my thanks to Pauline Follinsby, Antoinette West, and all of the team who is working over the summer to do that. It's unsung work, but it's very important. And then finally, a couple of welcomes, new principals to BUSD. Would love to welcome Jana Holmes to Emerson, Marco Taylor to John Muir, and Vanessa Flynn to Rosa Parks. I know that you will find all of these three communities to be warm and welcoming. I also, on behalf of the board, want to extend to you our welcome to the BUSD community. And then finally, a couple of very special events. We have this weekend 2 separate events. I plan to attend to both of them and hope to meet lots of you there. One is the school supply giveaway at San Pablo Park on Saturday. I've signed up for a shift at noon, and so plan to be there. That's right when food is being served, I understand. That's why I timed my visit. And then on Sunday, the Solano Stroll takes place. I'll also be there joining my colleagues at a booth, celebrating all of the accomplishments of BUSD with our community members. So please come to one or the other of those events. Elementary families, just this reminder that our back to school night is tomorrow, is September 5th. And so please plan to come to your school and learn about the great things that are happening in your child's school. And then finally, the first DLAC meeting, the District English Language Advisory Committee, is taking place on September 10th at Longfellow Middle School. This is an important opportunity for English learner families to learn both about services that are provided here in the district and to express their opinion about the quality of those services as they impact their students. So I hope to see you there as well. Thank you very much.
We will never forget you again.
She will never forget again. No.
Where am I? So now we can go to approval. We approve the consent calendar. We're pulling items 11.2, 11.6 afterwards.
And 11.11.
And 11.11. So first, well, let's approve the consent calendar with those amendments.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Director Sinai.
Second.
Second by Director Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so now we'll pull for action. We'll do it now. It's not on our calendar, but let's do 11.2. Let's vote on that separately.
I'll move that one.
Director,
We should do a
Vice President.
roll call.
Liz, because I need to
Director Julie Sinai,
recuse.
Director Judy Appel, Director Estella Hemp, Director Khadijah Brown, Vice President Ty Alper,
Oh, aye.
President Beatriz Leyva Cutler.
Aye. So now we'll go to 11.
No, let's just save it for after.
Okay, so we'll go to 11.11. We're just polling that for the next board meeting. Okay.
So
11.6, it's also action. It's action.
It's action, but, oh, I thought you were calling it now.
Did you want to discuss?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. that's
Okay,
why
okay, 11.6, go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to make sure to make a comment because this item is to approve purchase furniture for the Longfellow Middle School and the Berkeley High maker spaces, and as part of CTE. And I just want to be clear that for Longfellow, I know that there's a lot of discussion going on about what the makerspace is going to look like. I know our facilities department is involved in that discussion, and I think that we just need to be really conscientious. So I will approve this, but I want to make it clear that our facilities department and our superintendent will both make sure to approve the purchases. I think it's great that the community is interested in being involved in what those makerspaces will be, but I think we also have to have a longer-term vision about how it links to our high school and how it supports the students that we most want to support.
Director Sinai?
Just to add something, I think also in coordination with the facilities, our program director for Career Tech Ed, Wynn Skeels, has been actively engaged in the selection of the furniture as well.
And
Go ahead.
the Facilities Subcommittee has also had some discussions from Mr. Calise and the CTE folks about what their plans are.
Thank you. I mean, those conversations also were going on before I left.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's some new information that's come to light, and we also have a new superintendent who might also want to just share his vision about where that space should, how to use that space and utilize it most effectively to meet our goals. And so I just want to make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves.
Okay, so are we ready to vote?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Okay, moved by
second.
Director Albert, second by Vice President Albert. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll move to the update on BOSD's garden and cooking program with Supervisor Jezra Thompson.
Good evening, Ms. Thompson. As you're setting up, I thought I'd offer a couple of opening remarks about the really remarkable garden program that I've been learning about in my short time here. So what I'd love to do is just share a brief program history. Some of this will be included in Ms. Thompson's remarks about the program, but these things strike me as particularly remarkable. So among the things that I've been seeing as I visit our schools are absolutely gorgeous grounds, and on those grounds are gardens growing fresh fruits and fresh vegetables. Sometimes there's animals, and there's students everywhere taking care of the vegetables, pulling vegetables out of the earth, and then finally passing into kitchen facilities to prepare those vegetables for meals. And all of that is really quite remarkable. I've never seen anything like it at this scale. This is a 14-year-old program here in Berkeley Unified. As Ms. Thompson will describe, it's been funded in a variety of ways over the course of this 14-year span. And it's been through some great times, some cuts, and now is back and restored to sustainability. So with that, Ms. Thompson is going to offer both a program history, talk a little bit about its current state, and then describe current work that she's leading to bring the program into its next level.
Thank you for that proper setup, Superintendent Stevens. And thank you, School Board, for inviting me to present an update about the gardening and cooking program. It's been probably about a year since I've been before you all presenting on where we're at. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I have 10 minutes, and so I'm going to briefly present to you the gardening and cooking program at Berkeley Unified School District. I am Jezra Thompson. I supervise the program, and I'm hoping that this presentation is going to inspire some questions. So I'm going to briefly go through what we do currently at Berkeley Unified. But before I do that, I want to bring this to the why. What I have up here is some research, very popular. You'll be reading about this, or you have read about this in various forms. It's talking about if we set our kids up for success with their health, then we set them up for success with their academics. And that's the job that we take a lot of pride in. We currently serve all of our students from preschool to high school. These are last year's numbers, that's about 7,800 students. We do this with support from 17 educators and 1.5 administrative staff. We have 17 school gardens in our preschools, in our elementary schools, our middle schools, and Berkeley Technology Academy. We've developed 2 career technical education public health programs at Berkeley High School and then piloting it this year at BTA. And then we serve our kids with more nutrition education in 4 kitchen classrooms. I'll be talking a little bit more about how we do all of this in my next couple slides. A brief history that Dr. Stevens quickly outlined. I'm not going to go too in depth in this because it's a long road, but in 2012, we lost all of our federal funding. That was about $1.9 million. A few of you remember those occasions. That was funded through the USDA Farm Bill, and that got cut across the board countrywide, including us. In 2013 is when we had to rethink how we are diversifying our funding and our programming. This is also when the Berkeley Soda Tax campaign started. In 2014, Berkeley was the first city to pass a soda tax, and we began collecting the tax as a city, and we were granted a grant in about 2015, 2016 from the Healthy Berkeley Fund. In 2016-17, we got our first Healthy Berkeley large grant. We were able to bring back some cooking instruction. We published our first garden-based learning curriculum, which was incredibly important because in addition to losing our federal funding, we also were moved from nutrition services into education services to better support all of our students' academic success with more stringent NGSS and Common Core. 2018-2019, just last year, we got some new programming in. We piloted our CTE, we began after-school cooking and gardening programming, and we've built out our Longfellow program. In the next 2 years, including fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21, we got our first 2-year grant cycle from Healthy Berkeley and an increase in funding, and I'll be talking a little bit more about what we're doing with that. Like I said before, we have a garden in every school. We are the only school district in the entire country that has a gardening cooking program that's integrated into the district-wide. It's pretty remarkable. We are a model for a lot of other school districts. I'm constantly counseling other educators who are interested in this work. Last year, we provided over 5,000 garden classes to all of our students that are out in our garden every other week. That's twice a month with full garden instruction. We do a K-5 garden-based learning curriculum that I mentioned before. All of these lessons are available online for free download. It was a multi-year project that gleaned from resources and created beautiful lessons that pull out standards of what exactly we're instructing in NGSS and Common Core specifically. We get professionally trained on this every year. Our middle school gardening and cooking instruction is quite remarkable. We are putting a lot of energy into our most at risk and at need schools to support our students in learning in middle school. We do project-based learning and we do entrepreneurial education. We do some makers space kind of theory of projects. We serve all 6 grades in Willard and Longfellow, and we do additional instruction with Willard's Growing Leaders program and Longfellow's special education program. We also have a full-out kitchen in Longfellow that facilities really supported us with. This was newly developed last year. We've equipped it. We've got full cooking classes that connect directly to what students are learning in the garden space. We brought back cooking, and we do this in after-school programming at John Muir in Thousand Oaks. We served probably about 200 students, but we only surveyed those that we really focused on a 4-week instructional intensive. Last year, we surveyed 123 students, and 17 reported to have eaten more vegetables, and 12% drank less sugar-sweetened beverages, which is quite significant since we've only been measuring this for about a year. We invite our families into these spaces to join us for a meal. We practice a lesson that we do with other students really quickly that teaches them about how to read sugar and nutrition facts labels and what to look out for and how to make healthy choices. We cook a healthy meal together, and then we are able to have really casual conversations with our families in a space that we're not usually able to have such casual conversations. So it's a real learning environment. 37% of our participants said that they would reduce their sugar after this class, which is a radial effect for Berkeley, because we affect all of our Berkeley students and their families. We've developed last year a career technical education and public health program with the career technical education program supervisor, Wynn Skeels, and our partners over at Berkeley High. We were able to provide these students with a full-out curriculum that's newly developed in public health above and beyond epidemiology, which is the traditional public health and CTE. We've also created a paid internship where we pay these students to work in the Berkeley community around public health topics, such as the district's wellness policy, lifelong medical, ecology centers, farmers markets, and we invite guest speakers. You'll see a picture here, which is Bonnie Christensen, our new Food and Nutrition Services Director. She was talking to our students about how to plan and feed a large-scale public school district, and it was quite illuminating. Here's our budget for this year and next year. We got an increased city grant from Healthy Berkeley. This comes with a lot of different requirements, including the general funds matching of $300,000, which is a base level that was decided upon a couple years ago when we first started getting this funding. It also requires us to do rigorous results-based accountability assessments of all of our programming and quarter assessments and reporting. It has also come with a subgrant with Cookie Matters to do early child education instruction for our teachers. This is a large amount that we're able to be fully funding our preschool to high school programs. That is a real quick overview. I hope that this has inspired several questions, and I would also invite you to come out to our gardens and kitchens. We would love to have you and tour you around just for a class as well as a family event, which is really magical. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you. Board members, questions?
Thank you so much, Ms. Thompson. This is really impressive and exciting. I'm curious whether the passage of our sustainability plan a year or so ago has impacted your work, or how sustainability is infused in the curriculum that you've developed?
So our published curriculum actually pulls out different sustainability projects that are directly connected to standards, but our ethos are, all about sustainability by nature of practicing in a school garden. I'm not sure how fully passed the sustainability plan is, but I'm looking forward to being involved in more of those conversations as we develop more of a vision moving forward with the district. I'm also involved with the wellness policy with Bonnie Christensen, so that's directly connected to the sustainability plan.
Director Sane.
Thank you so much. This is an exciting report. I wanted to also just take a minute to really thank the Berkeley voters, because without their passage of Measure D at the time of the sugar-sweetened beverage tax, we wouldn't have this funding. And I really want to applaud you and the district team for working with the city around coming up with a proposal that the commission felt really good about and that we've increased funding for. I'm curious, I know, having been on the commission at the beginning, one of the issues is that the commission's very passionate about making sure that funds are really reaching our kids of color, kids who are disproportionately impacted by advertising and kind of being bombarded with sugar-sweetened beverages, and how, in your report, have you been able to talk about how we're reaching kids?
Thank you for that question and for acknowledging the city voters that made this possible and for your participation and service in the commission. It's been a long road that we have been on, and it's been quite an opportunity, and we are very grateful for having that opportunity. And it's the way that we program is looking at the data historically. So we look at where our populations are and which schools. We look at the social economic need and where there's more learning gaps in the achievement. And that's where we provide more staff time and more funding for materials and resources. For example, at Longfellow, we have a garden instructor and have recently hired a garden instructional technician, as well as a cooking instructor and a cooking instructional technician. We collaborate a lot with their after-school program and their teachers. We have a lot more staff time paid in addition to their FTE to collaborate with teachers and have more one-on-one supports for students, such as Mr. Lechuga's Young Men's Circle. Mm-hmm. So that's a real focus of ours. It's been an ask from the commission, but it's also part of our own goals as a program. That's also how we've chosen to pilot our nutrition after-school programming at Thousand Oaks and John Muir, particularly John Muir because they serve a larger Bears population. And so we develop our curriculum in collaboration with those staff members to make them more relevant and to provide more FTE at those sites.
Great. And just to clarify, while you talked about the middle schools being Willard and Longfellow, mm-hmm. we do have a very robust garden and cooking program at King.
We do. In
partnership with the Edible Schoolyard. So maybe you could just clarify why you don't list King in your slide with the middle schools.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So Edible Schoolyard in Berkeley has a very robust program that teaches in the garden and their beautiful kitchen classroom. They do family events. They're fully funded with the Alice Waters Foundation and fully staffed at that site. So that is not necessarily a focus of ours in terms of staff time and funding, but we do consider them collaborative partners And we engage in them actually this year, hopefully in more collaboration with our staff as we develop more lessons.
Yep, Director Appel, and then our student director.
Again, thank you so much for this presentation, but also for all the incredible work that you've done.
Thank you.
What is it, for the last 5 years or something?
6.
6. It's pretty amazing how far you've taken this from, the moment of feeling like we were, decimated to, and you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I want to thank not just the people of Berkeley, but also those who led the efforts and had the vision to really ask the people of Berkeley to support this gardening program, because I really think it adds a lot to the experience of our students. And so I just wanted to make sure to thank you for this. And I guess I'm also wondering for those of us, or even if there are others who want to kind of to see it in action, how would we go about doing that?
To see it in action?
Like to see the classes and...
Yeah, and I get requests from all over. People coming in from Japan want to come visit. A lot of media requests, and I make sure that we get the proper okays and the rights if there's videos, and I'm always out there with folks. And we do encourage people who are interested in this work, particularly those that are educators or that are family members or board members or teachers that want to see what we're doing, to come out and see what we're doing.
Great.
It's been a real fun experience for everyone. It's more fun that way.
I also, I'm glad that you brought up the King, kind of how King's program interacts with what we're doing, because I think you've done a great job of trying to learn from their lessons and leverage that to bring it to the district. So I'm really happy with what you've reported. I had questions about it in the beginning, whether we were going to really be able to bring a rich experience to our students, and I think that you've been able to help us accomplish that, so thank you.
Thank you so much for that, and it's been a real community effort. And I'd also like to say that when the campaign for the soda tax, or SSB tax, Measure D was being proposed by our community members, a lot of the conversations were around it supporting our work. And I know that it's because of our educators being able to connect with our students in such a way over the years that it's really made for a powerful narrative and has helped that be passed. Thank you.
Student director.
Yeah, so first of all, just thank you for coming and sharing. That was really cool to see. I just wanted to say on behalf of some of my classmates and my peers that this type of lesson is super important. I know so many people who really completely threw themselves into their cooking classes and their garden classes all through elementary school as well as middle school, and they wanted to continue in high school. There was even a new course, I think it was new for Berkeley High, that was about cooking, and it was with the edible schoolyard, but unfortunately it was canceled for the semester.
Well, can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. And I shared with you all a couple pages just now with some quotes that I didn't want to include in the PowerPoint because it got a little too much, but there's a lot of quotes that we gather in our assessments and also part of our exit tickets with our families that I'd like to share with you. So please indulge in those. And we were creating before last year, the year before last, FY18, I believe, we worked with Edible Schoolyard and Ecology Center and our partners over at, I believe even Lifelong participated in this, to do a pilot. We had a working group of high school students where we asked them, how can we support you in your growth of learning more about healthy food access and being involved in your community around these topics. And through that pilot, that kind of focus group, we created a career technical education with the CTE program as well as these existing partners, including Edible Schoolyard. And we were able to pilot that full curriculum package because of our collaboration with all of the agencies. We had contracts and MOUs in place, and we were fully ready to go with Edible Schoolyard, but they had a change in their own staffing, and so they actually had to drop out of this particular part of instruction about a week before we started school. So we are scrambling to figure out how to continue to serve our CTE at BHS because it's incredibly important to Win and I, and so we are actively trying to bring that back as soon as possible, hopefully in January. At the same time, we are fully piloting this at BTA with our garden instructor leads and cooking supports and Principal Weber over there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that background information.
Thank you.
I mainly brought it up just to tell you that when the students that I know found out that that course was canceled, they were just like, they're so disappointed. And that was just a clear reflection on how passionate high school students really are for those types of courses. So I just really wanted to share that with you to kind of just let you know. I feel like that's really important, especially to know that your work is affecting students and it is inspiring them. So thank you
so much for that. And it's so important and passionate to all of us. I know all of our partners are deeply wanting to get re-engaged with that and support our students, so thank you.
First, thank you so much. Just like my colleague said, thank you for this wonderful presentation. I'm really excited about this opportunity, this educational opportunity, and these new nutritious options for our students. It's really, really amazing. I do have a couple of questions. I'm interested to hear more about the curriculum and its alignment to the next generation science standards. I know that there isn't a lot of statewide curriculum around NGSS, so I want to hear maybe 3 focus points on how the curriculum is NGSS aligned, and then I'll ask my next question.
Yes, thank you for going one at a time too, because it's been a long day. And
For us
I'm
all.
so excited to invite you out to our gardens as one of our newer board members and get to know you. So thank you so much for that question. When we first started developing our garden-based learning curriculum, probably about in 2014, we started these efforts because we were moved from nutrition services to education services, and so we took that upon us pretty rapidly. California was an early adopter of the next generation science standards, and Berkeley was being a huge participant in that. Our science teacher leads were already starting to have working groups around NGSS, and so we were engaged in those working groups as partners, and we created a curriculum based on that collaboration. We gleaned from all of the resources that exist, and there is actually a lot of resources. There's Edible Schoolyard, there's the numerous of places. My brain is not focusing so much, but there's so many in California. And so we gleaned from all of our partners, and then we practiced, and we worked with UC Berkeley's staff to make sure that we were assessing if we were implementing the curriculum according to design. So we had like a backwards design. So we would have these lessons, practice them, and then rewrite them. And we were able to focus primarily on NGSS because it was a very natural connection in our school gardens. And while we were maintaining the gardens when we had to have a huge cut, we wanted to make sure that we built that out. And so we're doing the same in our kitchen classrooms, making sure that they're aligned with our standards particularly. And it was also a huge interest of the board at the time when we were creating our curriculum to look at NGSS because we were an early adopter, and there was an ask for more science support in our schools. Did that answer your question?
Well, my question was more so around just like the focus points of NGSS, but we're running out of time, so I can definitely connect with you offline on that. And then my other question is, do you currently have or do you have ideas for a district-wide cookbook that could be offered to families?
Yeah, we actually have one. It's available free for download on our website, and I'm happy to provide you all one. We are actually developing a new one because our educators have been working hard over the summer developing new resources after practicing for so many years. They found better methods, and so we're going to be publishing our 2nd edition of those. I'll get you all print copies.
Awesome.
We also have print copies of our curriculum for you.
Awesome.
So let's please talk offline.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I just wanted to thank you also for making a stronger connection with food nutrition services. I think that that is a natural collaboration, and in terms of also taking the lead with a sustainability plan. So I wanted to thank you for that. And maybe in Friday Notes, we can hear more about the evaluation and the process that you're going to, with the City of Berkeley funding, that is being required and asked of you. I know that that could be a little bit big, so I'd be interested in hearing, perhaps in Friday Notes, what that's going to mean.
We'd be happy to include.
Yeah.
Yes, happily. And it's been a real honor and opportunity to work with Bonnie in Nutrition Services. It's really brought a lot of joy to our work and our collaboration, so we look forward to talking more about that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you. Okay, well, now we'll go to overview of possible ballot measures for 2020. Thank you.
For this one, I'm actually going to change locations and join Natasha Beery down at the table so that we have the opportunity to present some staff thinking on potential ballot measures for the coming years.
Okay, thanks.
There we are. We are on. The view is somewhat different down here. My colleague Natasha Beery and I are very happy to have the opportunity to present this evening on potential voter measures. So what we hope to do in this presentation is review some of the previously approved measures here in Berkeley, and then talk as well about some of the ongoing and developing needs of the district, and potentially how some of those districts may be met by the development of new revenue sources.
Okay, thank you. So we're very fortunate to live in a community that strongly supports our schools, and we have support for both our strong and well-maintained buildings through our facility bond, which was most recently renewed in 2010. You'll be hearing more about it this evening, and a maintenance special tax that protects our investments in our building by keeping them well-maintained. And then, of course, who can forget the Berkeley Schools Excellence Program, BSEP. I'm the director of BSEP, and am very pleased that in 2016 we had record support. Voters supported the renewal of that fund, which first began in 1986, with a record 88.9% of the vote. Thanks to BSEP and the facilities and the maintenance, we see these results. We have children who are enjoying smaller class sizes, well-stocked libraries, well-maintained buildings, and smiley faces. And I'm going to switch from those lovely faces to a somewhat sadder portrait. This is a new map. I think many of the board have seen an earlier version that I shared back when BSEP was being renewed. This is from Ed Week, June 4th, 2019. What Ed Week does is look at average spending per student across the United States, adjusted for regional cost differences. And the average spending per student you see up above, $12,756. California is well below that average. We have risen. However, in the last few years, if you may recall, we were at one point at number 44 out of 50. We are now at 37 between Alabama and Mississippi. So instead of being in the bottom 20%, we're in the bottom 33%. So I guess that's progress, but it's certainly not where we would like to be. And in fact, it's only thanks to the local funding sources that the Berkeley Unified School District approaches something like the national median. But those dollars from BSEP can only be used for specific purposes, those class size reduction, libraries, student support, et cetera, and cannot address many needs that the board is well aware of, and we have rising costs, mandated costs that we've had to address, and we're in what's known as the silent recession with essentially flattening revenues and these rising costs. So because of that, over the last 2 years, we have had to cut nearly $4 million from our ongoing budget, very painful cuts, and this is just a small representative sample from the last 2 years of what we've cut from both central and site budgets. It's hard to imagine cutting any more deeper without really doing damage to our programs and to the daily experience of our students. So, meantime, We are also facing in Berkeley the same crisis in teacher recruitment and retention and educator recruitment and retention that we're seeing nationwide. We're not immune to that in Berkeley, and in fact, to some degree, it's made worse here by the higher cost of living. And I thought it would be useful to just do a little snapshot. I asked our friends in HR what things look like during the first week of school in terms of the certificated staffing. So during the first week of school this year, we had still 7 classroom teacher positions open. The children did have an adult in front of them, but we had substitutes. We also have more interns than we've had before. 9 special education positions open, teachers on special assignment positions also. And then on the classified side of the house, we're also experiencing a recruitment and retention issue. We had, this is from earlier in August, but we still have many of these positions still open: school bus drivers, nutrition services, instructional assistants who work with our youngest children, school campus aides, and then those who work in special ed, as well as our instructional techs in after school. So we are not only having difficulty filling positions, but we're competing with other districts. And here's a little snapshot as well as what is happening in other districts. So part of the problem here is that we have educators who are making informed choices, looking at what their options are in nearby districts. They love working in Berkeley. They love our smaller class sizes and our great programs, but they also have bills to pay. And so they're looking at numbers like these. This is a report which comes from school services. This is 2017-18 numbers. What we're looking at here is a group of districts, mostly Bay Area districts. I took out a couple of them that are comparisons that are not in the Bay Area. So just looking at the 18 districts where we have comparison numbers. The first column of figures shows you how far off we are from the average of that comparison district. There's a second column there where we're looking at a somewhat a regional average, which includes counties like Marin, Napa, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Solano. And you see that Berkeley is down at 16 out of 18, about $8,000 off the median for the comparative districts, and then for the regional, about $9,000 off. This is comparing salary and benefits, and that is one thing I want to point out, is that there are some districts, Albany is an example of this, which have very generous compensation packages that include a lot of benefits, and actually the salary itself is not as high. Albany, if you were just looking at salary, would be down around 11. If you were just looking at salary, we only inch up to about 15. So how is this being achieved? Well, here's part of the answer. In the first column with the C's and the T's, what I've done here is taken a look at which of these districts have concentration funding. So that's from the local control funding formula, where more than 55% of the students fit the high need category of being low-income English learners or foster youth. They get supplemental funding, and many of these districts are directing that funding not only to programs, but also to salary and to recruitment. The T stands for tax, and not just any tax. I'm looking at districts that have taxes that specifically address recruitment, retention, or compensation. Obviously, Berkeley does have taxes. We have BSEP, but that is not targeted towards those needs. What you do see in the farthest right column is an adjusted ranking. Were you to take in another factor that does include what BSEP does for our students, and that is looking at ADA, the number of pupils, average daily attendance, divided by FTE, full-time equivalent, certificated staffing. That's where you see that we have better ratios. We're number 3 after Emeryville and San Francisco in terms of the number of educators that are spending time with our students. And so that's where we've made our investments. But meanwhile, unfortunately, we are falling, not being competitive in terms of the salaries that we're offering to our educators. So, whoops, went a little too far there. Let's go back. So here's a sample of what other local districts are doing. This is just 5 of about a dozen recent measures, which have in their language something that specifically addresses compensation or retention. And I also have figures on how much they raise, but just wanted to give you a sampling that they are really focusing on this in neighboring districts. And so the question here is, what about Berkeley? What are we able to do? We conducted an initial voter poll back in May to ask our Berkeley voters what they think about this, and it will not surprise you that Berkeley voters are well aware of this issue and concerned about it. So here are 3 questions that we asked for whether their level of agreement. 90% of them agreed that teachers are paid too little compared to other professions. 94% of them agreed that California should provide more funding, and 95% agreed that the cost of living in Berkeley makes it hard for teachers to afford living here on their afford housing on their current salaries. And in fact, of those numbers, those 93, 94, 95%, over 80% strongly agreed with those statements. So there's considerable sympathy and understanding of the situation. Also, here's a question that we've asked over the last couple of polls about how they feel about the taxes that they pay. And actually, this is a community that takes pride in the fact that they are supporting our local public schools. So 80% in 2016, essentially unchanged. 2019, still a great deal of pride and understanding that this is something that we want to do at the local level. I would say, at the same time, we don't want to take that support for granted. There's a significant tax burden. I'm a taxpayer in Berkeley, and this is something that we really do need to pay attention to, at the same time as being very grateful and aware that this is something that our community supports. And then here's the last little set of bar graphs from that May voter poll, where our concern was we may be asking the voters to renew multiple taxes and a bond at the same time. So we're looking at the potential of the bond that was last renewed in 2010, the maintenance tax in 2010, and then a potential new special tax. How do they feel about all of those? And we gave a basic explanation of what each of those would pay for. And we found that 72%, or the pollster found, that 70% of, and these are likely voters, and people, we were looking at both March and November likely voters, were willing to support all 3 of those measures. Some subgroups are more supportive, some of the subgroups are less supportive, but overall 72%. Furthermore, if you were supportive of one measure, you were likely to be supportive of the others. So 91 to 92% of those who already voiced support for the maintenance tax or the bond were willing to consider another special tax that could be focused on educator recruitment and retention. So, what do we want to do about that? This is the question that we're bringing to the board. Staff believes that the board should consider the possible addition of a special tax which could be brought either to a March or November ballot. This trajectory presupposes a March ballot, but you do have in your board doc another calendar which goes towards November. Ordinarily, we tend to put things on a November ballot because that's when there's higher turnout, but we're expecting high turnout in March because of the great deal of attention on what's happening with the primaries. And then we're also very aware that there are some needs both on the bond side and on the special tax side that could be better addressed sooner. So if the board were to determine that it made a sense to ramp up towards a March ballot, this is what you would need to be doing. First of all, there's a lot of background work that has already been completed by various committees, but you would want to go into the board having further process and some further public process. We can have a town hall, for example, is one of the ideas that we've considered. Another voter poll is recommended, and that's something that I'm working on currently. And then you would have a public hearing and resolution. Ultimately, what you're looking at in order to get onto the March ballot is a deadline with the county of December 6th. Then it gets turned over to volunteers. At that point, the BUSD job is simply to provide information. Volunteers take over a campaign, and the Berkeley voters ultimately make their decision on March 3rd to take effect for the following year. So, what meantime needs to be worked on is clarifying the purposes and the use of the funds and the amount that would be needed and that voters would support. And then a decision that's up to you, the board, March or November. And then the term of each of these measures, the bond and maintenance tax, tend to be 10 or 12 years. The special tax, we would have to determine what makes sense for that new tax. And then the plan currently, as I understand it, is that we would be returning to you on September 18th, hopefully with a preliminary report on a fall voter poll, which would give us some additional information on voter interest and preferences, with a plan for some further public process. Superintendent Stevens has some thoughts about some recruitment and retention strategies addressing both the classified and the certificated side of the issue, and then a question to you, the board, as to whether you would like to green light movement towards a March 2020 timeline for 2 or 3 of these possible voter measures. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Board members? Questions, comments, concerns, motivations? So I think for maybe for me and for the public, in terms of explaining the process for the district's involvement in this process on a ballot measure, maybe that would help, just in terms of our constraints and also our role in this.
So as you may recall from the BSEP process of 2015-16, there is a portion which really belongs to the district and to the board, which is making the determination about how a ballot measure is constructed, what goes into it. You may, as a board, you would adopt a resolution and you can take a stance on things that support our students. You can urge people to support this. However, from the point of view of our resources, any kind of campaign would be conducted entirely by volunteers. There's separate fundraising. No Berkeley funds may be used to advocate for anything on the ballot, whether it's a candidate or whether it's a ballot measure. So we would be very careful, as we always have in the past, to have a very clear separation. And our offices, our staff offices, can be called upon for questions of essentially of information, but not for advocacy. Was that your question, essentially?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just for clarity in terms of our role and responsibilities, both to our district and to the public. Director Appel?
Yeah, I want to thank you for the presentation, and I think particularly the list the list of the different districts that show how low we are and how relatively little we pay our teachers. And I think when I learned that, I was really surprised, because we have a great district. I have 2 kids who've now gone, they're done with school, and I feel like BUSD has really prepared them for the future. And this board has been making a lot of cuts over the last couple of years, and in order to compensate our teachers in the way that they deserve to be compensated, so that we can get the kind of quality teachers that I think our community deserves and our students deserve, we have to, unfortunately, because politically I don't know if I agree that it should go out this way, I do think that we're going to have to find another source of funding in order to compensate our teachers the way that the way they deserve to be compensated. And so I just wanted to put in that vote of support, because I think it's been a long and very thoughtful process to get here to the point where you're in front of us proposing this and asking us to soon approve this as a possible source of funding for our teachers. And I just want to make it clear to people watching that, if we want to continue to have a quality district, that means we have to have quality teachers. And we've really done a lot of the cuts that we can do. And so it's either come up with this alternative way to fund our teachers, or really, I think, eat into the high quality of our district by cutting things that we really don't want to cut.
Director Sane?
I, too, want to appreciate all the work that you've done, and I know, in approving the May poll and that we put money in for the follow-up poll, we'll get additional information from our Berkeley voters. Echoing what Director Appel says, I was shocked when I saw where our salaries ran in the regional average. And while I think we all have said throughout the last year that our state has got to step up and fund public education, we did just get word that it looks highly unlikely that the state is going to put forward the full and fair funding ballot measure for the March ballot. Why? A supermajority of Democrats control our state legislature, and they can't put this on the March ballot. So we really have some work to do with our legislators, especially our legislators who we think are supportive of the work that we're doing. And so it forces us, to look back to our special taxes. I hope that we can continue to lobby and advocate at the state level, but that doesn't mean we can step away from the responsibility to look at our recruitment. And I think the slide that you put up showing the amount of vacancies that we have tells the story of how hard it is to recruit in our high-cost districts. So I want to echo the support for moving forward with this, as quickly as we can. Also because while we can't organize a campaign from here, we need our community activists to be able to activate as soon as possible. So the more transparency and exploration we can do on September 18th to actually be able to arrive at a really coherent decision on how to begin to move forward, I think it'll benefit our community overall to be prepared. And I know we're going to get a presentation in a little bit around the facilities, but we need to have the funding for our facilities, for our maintenance, and for our humans in order to be able to educate our kids. And, we just have to continue to count on the community in Berkeley, and the poll shows that we're supportive. So thank you.
Anyone else? No. Okay, we all look forward to the September 18th meeting. Exciting. Thank you. Thank you, Ned.
Thank you, Superintendent, for your contribution to this conversation.
And now
You just wanted to get some steps in.
we have an,
We're going to work on sharing.
so now we'll have an update on facilities measure planning by Director John Calise.
Good evening, Board. So Superintendent Stevens, everyone else, welcome back. It's been a while since I've sat here, it feels like. So tonight we were going to talk about an update on our facilities master plan and how it actually relates, how it relates to our capital facilities program overall, and really the consideration of a general obligation bond, but what we've been able to do with that over the years, because as Director Beery has pointed out, this community has really been incredibly incredibly generous over the years with what they've done with their taxes, and we're very grateful for that. So if we look at our capital facilities program, over the last roughly 30 years, there's been 3 general obligation bonds, starting in '92, another in 2000, and another now in 2010. The 2010, we're currently still spending down Measure I, but all of the projects for the most part are allocated, and the funds are allocated to projects that are either in process, have been completed, or on the books and currently being worked on as we speak. So with these general obligation bonds, we've really done a number of things to include new construction, modernization projects, a myriad of systems replacements, some of which include MEP, mechanical, electrical, but then also fire life safety systems, and then roofing systems. There's been an approach for many years, not only about improving the quality of our schools and the quality of our classrooms, but also being very cognizant of keeping our students and staff safe, warm, and dry. Additionally, these bond funds pay for what we refer to as FF&E, also known as furniture, fixtures, and equipment, playgrounds, and sport fields. So just to kind of highlight, and I just want to be very clear that this is only a very small amount of the projects that have been completed, But some of the larger projects over the years, so Berkeley High School, there was a dilapidated old gym that was seismically unstable. That was demolished, and with that, there was the construction of not only a new gym, but new classroom wing. Additionally, there was construction of the new stadium. That included the field, the bleachers, locker rooms, all of those athletic support spaces. And then the creation of Mollering Field, which beyond just the field itself, actually required us to redo all of Derby Street and turn it into curvy Derby so that we could fit the appropriate sized baseball field there. Through modernization, we sort of attacked some sustainability and pride projects as well. There was a new classroom wing at Jefferson, roof replacement at Malcolm X, and then the pride piece plays into the condition and the appearance of our schools, like the exterior paint at Washington, but it also plays a key role in prolonging the life of our schools. And then there's a myriad of green energy projects such as solar that has happened across the district, such as there's a picture there of the rooftop of Malcolm X, but unfortunately we've sort of barely scratched the surface on that, and we have a lot more work to do as it relates to sustainability and green energy. We've tackled access, opportunity, and excellence through different projects, such as locker rooms have been done at King. They've also been done at Willard. And then we have a new transportation facility on 6th and Gilman. And then classrooms themselves. So we've done a lot of work with our general education classrooms, our special needs classrooms, and then CTE. The picture that you see here is a Mactronics classroom that was just opened this year over at the adult school, along with the CTE shop spaces that were completed at the high school. Engagement, enrichment, and equity. So these are projects that are currently underway, actually, just about completed right now is the auditorium space at King Middle School. That's coming out beautiful. I invite you to go over there and take a look if you haven't seen it yet. The visual and performing arts, which was just the closed down locker room that was to say it was in a dilapidated state would be an unfair statement. It was really in a bad shape, and that's turned into this beautiful space now to support our music program and our arts program across the district. And we're currently working through the modernization of the West Campus Capacity Project, which is the old realm connected to this space here. So next up is projects that we're currently working on with the remaining funds of the existing bond of Measure I. The 4 renderings that you see here is the biggest project in front of us, which is the Berkeley Community Theater. And when I say the biggest project, what I'm referring to is just the actual scope of construction and the cost. There's some general renderings here. This project includes a complete modernization of the classroom wing, as well as seismic upgrading of that classroom wing, as well as the stage box, and then dealing with accessibility throughout. If you've ever been inside of the classroom wing at the Berkeley Community Theater, you know that it's split amongst many different levels. Essentially, all of those levels are going to be taken down. The exterior walls will remain because they're historically protected. And then basically, we're going to build a ship in a bottle. We're going to build an entire new classroom wing inside of that building. Additionally, we have the cafe remodeled, scheduled to start at Cragmont. We're working through another district-wide safety project, which includes Columbine locks throughout. Electric bus infrastructure. Our manager of transportation, she was able to obtain through grants 8 electric buses, and we're putting in the infrastructure and the backbone needed for that. We have a cafe remodel coming up at Muir. And then Rosa Parks is listed as a multi-purpose room roof replacement. In actuality, it's significantly more than that. There's some seismic work that's being done to that. There's structural work, and then there's also a lot of ancillary projects that are happening at Rosa Parks in order to satisfy some state architect requirements. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about our master plan and where we are and how we got there. So as we worked through our facilities master plan, there was a set of guiding principles that were developed to really make sure that the master plan aligned with the district's vision and the district's mission, basically of creating quality education and education spaces. The guiding principles was that everything in the facilities master plan had to be developed in accordance with board and approved design standards, achievable with reasonably anticipated funds, promoting equity across the district is a large one, and then obviously incorporating the needs of a diverse student body. With that, as we rolled through the master plan and we began to think about projects, specific projects or types of projects, it was clear that we needed criteria that we had to consider for each of those types of projects. And that criteria was really about questions that we could ask ourselves. Some of those questions included, would it improve teaching and learning opportunities? Would it improve the campus safety while creating a welcoming environment? Campus safety can be a difficult one because you don't want it to feel as if it's locked down. You want it to be welcoming, but ultimately we do have a responsibility to keep our students and staff safe. Correcting infrastructure deficiencies, correcting operational deficiencies, expanding options for project-based learning and/or educational focused on career development, and then advancing the district's sustainability goal. So with that, the future project needs, through modernization and new construction, what we considered was ensuring the facilities support curriculum and programs. Additionally, enhancing STEM, CTE, and project-based learning opportunities, improving student support spaces, which is needed across the district, reducing operational costs through solar and sustainability, continuing infrastructure upgrades and system replacements. This, again, is about safe, warm, and dry and what's needed just to sort of keep the lights on. Addressing equity issues so all students can have access to high-quality programs. And then provide a safe and welcoming learning and work environments for students and staff. So at this point, staff recommendation, and this is for information, but really is that I think it's clear going through our facilities master planning process that there is potentially the need for another general obligation bond, a capital facilities program in 2020 as a ballot measure. What I'd like to do is come back on September 18th as well with next steps, with timeline considerations, very similar to what Director Beery and Dr. Stevens are talking about as they do align together. And then the bond authorization and cost analysis. So we have some rough ideas, or let me rephrase, we know exactly what our needs come down to, but then we also have some conceptual costs as it relates to projects. But what we have to do is sort of dwindle that down and talk about what we're asking to put out there as a general obligation bond and do the full analysis of what that's going to cost the taxpayers. We want to also consider how we align this potential ballot measure with the renewal of the maintenance tax, because the maintenance tax, as we know, while we can spend all these dollars to build these beautiful facilities, if we don't keep up with the maintenance on the buildings, unfortunately, they'll deteriorate quickly. And with that, I will answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Calise, for that wonderful and informing presentation. It was really great to see all of the updates and the before and after photos, so thank you so much for including that. Can you just talk a little bit, for your new projects, can you talk a little bit about the student support spaces?
Sure.
And, and your ideas for those?
So the student support spaces, and right now what we're talking about is types of projects. We're careful not to narrow it down to specific things. We don't want to make promises that we necessarily can't keep. But one of the things that was clearly identified as we did an assessment of all of our facilities, and we looked at it through the facility master plan, is student support spaces, specifically as it pertains to special ed, is needed vastly across the district. Right now, some of the programs operate in rooms that aren't necessarily designed. It doesn't offer the appropriate amount of privacy. And more importantly, there's a lot of room sharing that's going on that, while it works, it's not the ideal conditions to really promote that the positive learning environment that we want to support with our special ed program.
Okay, thank you. And if you don't mind going back to that slide, I had one more question. Oh, keep going.
One more?
Nope, that same slide, but all the way to the end.
Ah, sorry.
I know you talked about a little bit earlier about one of my concerns is around student safety.
Sure.
And I know you talked a little bit about, I can't remember the exact name for it, the
Columbine locks?
The Columbine locks. And are there any other project ideas around student safety and just ensuring that our schools are a bit safer? Unfortunately, with everything that's been going on around student safety, what are your ideas?
No, absolutely, it's a great
will they be
question.
included?
So the first project that was authorized by this board, and it was prior to me coming on, so I believe it was in October of 2018. What that included was Columbine locks on some of the doors at the elementary schools. And it was done that way primarily as a budget-saving measure, but unfortunately, that doesn't address all of our doors. And it was only looking at the elementary schools. And while some other schools have been done, there's still a lot that haven't been. So back in, it was either May or June of this year, the board actually approved new projects because we had the budget. And we just finished design now, and we actually have to sit down with the architect to look at that, and then it'll go to bid. And what that design actually includes is we've broken it up to include all of the remaining doors that are appropriate to have these locks throughout all of our elementary schools and middle schools. And then we've designed it as 2 other projects, and those 2 other projects were the high school and the adult school. And the reason that we've designed it as such is because we don't want to have to make the decision of what doors do we include and what doors do we not include. Instead, it's a lot easier to say we're able to do all of this type of school, and you know what, if we're going to include the high school or the adult school, which we should be including, it's going to cost us so much more. But for bidding purposes and project purposes, it actually made a lot of sense. In addition to that, our operations department is actually looking at, and this has really not too much to do with the bond, but we're looking at software to kind of let us know, right now with the number of cameras that we have across the district, if a camera goes down, unfortunately, we might not know about it right away. This software would alert us to that. So there are other steps that we're taking to improve safety. And then all of our new construction and modernization projects, we have been including work that includes cameras and things like that. Thank you.
Dinah?
Thank you for this great presentation. And also at I think it was the last meeting of the last school year, you gave us an overview of some of the facilities, master plan kind of overview. And I just want to reiterate that the facilities planning identifies hundreds of projects across the district that are going to have a price tag that's way higher than any particular bond is that we're able to put through. So, you know, there have been meetings over the summer that Vice President Alper and I have been involved with the superintendents around bond planning to really think about priorities. And I just think the amount of work that you and the consultants and folks have done has been really stellar. And I hopefully, you know, on September 18th, we'll get a really good sense of the outcome of the work that's been done over the last few months. So it's not anything that's been done quickly. There's been a whole lot of thought put through. I want to appreciate Tom Kelly has left for the discussion, but all the work that he's done to support the district around solar has been really valuable. Any way that we can, you know, use his expertise for cost savings is always good. And I think there's a lot of folks, obviously, in the community that are very engaged and interested in the bond as we move forward. So I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit more. I mean, having a student who went through the A building for 4 years in band and orchestra, I'm really excited about the development in those classrooms. And maybe if you could just clarify a little bit more about what's happening in the A building, that it's not affecting the bowl of the theater, but we're really focusing on the classrooms on that side. If you could talk a little bit more just so that people are clear.
Absolutely. So yeah, as I've talked about the A building, the classroom wing itself is going to be completely, the interior of the classroom wing, including the roof and all of the floors that are throughout there, is actually going to be completely demolished and removed. The exterior walls will remain. When we hit the basement level, because of the different elevations that are in there, when we hit the basement level, we'll actually be excavating down deeper. Once that's done, we'll be driving what we call micropiles into the earth, but for seismic stability, and then rebuilding that classroom wing within those exterior walls in what we call floor flattening. And what that is that alleviates and gets rid of all the different split levels. It creates space that's actually better for the teachers, and there were, I think, about 2 years of site meetings around this, of really creating the space that most supports the teachers, the students, but the programs most importantly. And then it's also about accessibility, right? So right now, there's a myriad of accessibility issues inside of that building, and this will correct all that. Now, in addition to the classroom wing, which will be, in addition to, first let me finish on the classroom wing, I'm sorry. It takes care of everything in the classroom wing that we need to do as far as our classroom and teaching and learning space. It also creates better supervision throughout the classroom wing, and there's a number of spaces for collaboration and student work to happen. Right now, if you go into the A wing at any point during the day, you'll find yourself, especially as you go up the stairs, having to step over students because they're on the stairs because they have nowhere else to practice or work. So we're going to get rid of that. We're going to create better spaces, obviously, for supervision as well, so to ensure that none of our students get hurt. And then there is nothing happening in the bowl with the exception of the current ADA lift that allows for the accessible seating in the front. There was a very obscure wall that was built to hide that, and the problem with it, and I understand why they did it at the time, it was the only option. The problem is if you're in a wheelchair and you need to use an accessible bathroom, even if there was a performance on stage, you had to essentially go up on stage, cross the back of the stage to get to the restroom. So that wall that I've heard referred to many times as an abomination is being removed. There is an accessible ramp going in that will actually blend in really well with the space. And then the stage box itself is being essentially completely emptied of all of the rigging, all of the ropes, all the catwalks, etc. And what's going to happen with that is all seismic retrofitting throughout the stage box, and then new catwalks all the way up to the gridiron, new rigging, new equipment, new lighting, etc. That equipment for the stage does stop at the proscenium wall. So the new equipment that we're putting in as far as the lighting and so on and so forth, we had to draw the line somewhere to contain costs, so we're stopping that there. But the infrastructure, the backbone as it relates and goes up to the control booths, if we do that, that may be in another project. Additionally, right now outside of the classroom wing, there's a concrete overhang with a very dark entry to get into there. That's actually being transformed into a student lobby. That student lobby helps us with accessibility for one, but what it also does is it creates an interior space that can be opened up to the exterior to sort of not only invite the campus in, but as part of our rendering, and I'll bring it up here, what it does is it moves the visual and performing arts piece out, so the top left, and it's difficult to see, but the front of that student lobby is actually a fully retractable glass wall that's designed to open so that musicians can come out and perform out in the courtyard and things like that.
Hi. So first of all, well, actually, my whole thing, I just really want to say that I super appreciate your consideration for the students' needs. I'm hearing everything you're saying, and I'm like nodding my head because I completely agree with everything you're listing. I took a class freshman year in the A building. I did dance, and so we spent a lot of time exploring the building, and yeah, definitely needs some help. Yeah, so thank you very much. And just a quick question, just for my own curiosity, as well as I have a few friends who are wondering, how long do you think that this is going to take until it's put into, until it's like usable, you know? Yeah.
So currently, our contractor is actually already on site doing what we call pre-construction work, and that's happening with the delivery method we're using really to control costs. But construction is currently scheduled to begin this coming June, so June of 2020, and that is based upon DSA approval. DSA, Division of State Architect, is our governing authority. They're the ones who actually look through and approve our blueprints. It's a large government agency, and sometimes things take time. That being said, based on their historical approval process, we should have the approval in time. We should begin in June with an August of 2022 opening. It's a 2-year project, sorry. So, yeah, so 2 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there will be a relocation of programs from what's currently there right now.
Yes, and part of what was approved on consent tonight was an allocation on Measure I for a new project. And what that new project included was actually the temporary portables to go on campus to support the programs that are currently in A building. In addition to the portables, we're going to use one of the gyms, and we've been working this out with site staff now for over a year as far as where do we put everyone? We're not going to stop the programs. So it'll be a little bit tight for 2 years, but the end result is going to be magnificent.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Any other board member? This is a great peek preview to what's to come for many of our families, and look forward to it on the 18th.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so up next is an approval of our 2018-19 unaudited actuals presented by our superintendent, associate superintendent, right?
Assistant.
Assistant.
We're working this out. So good evening, board members, superintendent. We'll be presenting the unaudited, this says the May revision workshop, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. We have the wrong graphic with the wrong chart. It looks the same. It does.
Can we say hi to Allison Bernstein?
So,
Hi, Allison. Hi, Allison.
so while we get
She
this
actually
out-
spent a lot of time in the A building, too,
Exploring.
exploring 35 years ago.
It's the one that I just sent you. It looks the same. So while we wait for this to be set up, I just want to echo Superintendent Stevens' thanks to our team. We were here working several weekends, and I'd like to introduce you to Antoinette West. This is our new fiscal director. So Antoinette will be doing a lot of these presentations going forward. What?
She's not that new.
Huh?
Antoinette West.
Yeah, you're not that new.
Well, it's since January. I mean,
Okay.
it's still new. I think we're going to hear this for a while, this being new for a while. So Antoinette came to us in January, and it's still fairly
I was going to say,
new.
she seems new to me.
So going forward, Antoinette will be doing several of these presentations. But for this evening, I'll be presenting, and Antoinette is kind of keeping me company. So are we okay? I don't know what's going on here. Let's clock. Okay, so it's the same graphic as our May revise, but this is our unaudited actuals. And this is when the district closes our books and we look at our revenues, our expenses, and what's our fund balance, and that's what we will carry forward to the new year. So first, we want to acknowledge that we did meet the state required reserve. And we don't it's not an interim reporting, so it's not a matter of a positive certification, but we did end the year with a positive ending fund balance. We take this opportunity to look at what we estimated versus how we actually close the books. There was a variance of $55,000, which is pretty remarkable. We actually spent, we overspent our 5,000s, which in the past we usually have a huge balance. So I think we're getting better at estimating our discretionary expenses. But I want to bring your attention to the unaudited actuals because that's our focus of tonight's presentation. So we do have an ending fund balance of $2.3 million, but our undesignated or amount that's actually available is only $500,000, which is an alarmingly low amount. So this is a cause for concern. And this is after we made budget cuts, implemented budget cuts, increased salaries. So I think the fact that we're ending at 0.5 million is something that we need to pay attention to. And we do designate amounts of 1.8 million, and that's set aside, if you will, so it's not available for expenses. And that's for revolving cash, or LCAP Board Policy Reserve, 4 million for carryover, and 2 million for our state required reserve. This next slide I thought would be helpful. This is in all our books. It's at the last graphic in our write-up, in our summary. So this kind of shows a decline that we're having year over year. We closed a lot higher in 15-16, and the general decrease. So this trend is pretty significant. And I don't know if you can see the little blue section, that's the Fund 1 undesignated reserve. That tiny little box is a 500,000, and you can see that's significantly different from the various, from the prior years. So we also thought it would be helpful to look at our LCAP balances. How are we building this balance? So this is the accumulation of our unspent balances year over year. So this year, our unspent balance was only $81,000, but you can see that's adding to the prior year. So we're now at 1.4 million, of which 1 million is designated for the reserve, and then 400 for the LCAP carryover. And significant variances, we did, this is covered actually in your board book if you want to look at it in more detail. It's pages 18 through 21, and it goes through line items and kind of explains the variances, but this is just an overall summary. So we did have revenues exceeding projections by $800,000, and that was mainly due to a 33 student increase in ADA, because our P2 measurement actually comes after we adopt the subsequent year budget. And this 33 student increase affected our LCAP revenue as well as our lottery revenue. So that's the main driver of that $800,000. Expenditures exceeded budgets by 0.2 million, and that was somewhat due to the 1% negotiated raise for classified staff. This was the additional 1%, and also the fact that our indirect costs came in under budget due to underspending in our restricted funds. Good news about our universal breakfast program. Increased participation actually resulted in a reduction of $100,000 to that program. In the past, we've had to increase that contribution, so I think we're doing better with that program. BSEP contributed an additional $200,000. We look at what we're actually spending on our classroom teachers when we close the books, and we calculate BSEP's additional share, and that was $200,000. That's helping our bottom line. However, when we look at our special education, we still have a lot of challenges in this area. Costs exceeded budget by 0.8 million, and consistent with prior years, it's usually due to our mental health services, our non-public agencies and schools, settlements, and legal costs. The 0.8 million actually was the final addition that we added, but we've been adding through the year. So if you look at the prior year, we're actually contributing $2.4 million more than the prior year, and I'll show you the breakdown on the following slide. It is challenging to accurately forecast costs because our children keep moving in and out of special ed. In fact, when we look at the December numbers, there was an increase of 39 students. But when you look at overall the number of students that we actually touched for even a day or a couple weeks, the increase was closer to 200 students. So it's not reported anyway, but we looked at the number of students in SACE, and it's difficult because they're in and out, they're doing different measurements. So we're working on getting a better reporting on this. So this is our trend. we look at, if we look at the prior year in terms of our contribution and the changes that we made as we adopted the budget, first interim, second interim estimated actuals, and then when we finally close the books, if you total all of those changes, that's $2.4 million over the prior year. And then if you look at the increase in our expenses, you can see that's what's actually driving the change in these contributions. So in the last two categories, we actually also looked at salaries and benefits and legal. So the primary drivers, I would say, would be our NPAs, our NPSs, and our settlements. So we also look at our other funds, our adult education. They have a maintenance of effort. They have met that, and they actually have a healthy ending fund balance of $1.1 million. We did contribute $600,000 for our older adult program, but this is the last year that we'll be doing that. 60,000, yeah. And then our child development fund, barely positive, no contribution from the general fund, but it's positive $32,000. I mentioned about our cafeteria fund, the contribution being $100,000 less, but you remember we write off costs of meals that were unpaid. The general fund actually contributes an amount for those meals, and it's now $90,000. It was $20,000 more than last year. So even despite that increase, we still reduced our contribution, and they had a positive ending fund balance of $142,000. So other consideration next steps, our increase in STIRS and PERS and our contribution to special ed, it continues to absorb a substantial amount of our increase in revenue. We do get about $3 million because of the COLA, but that's being used for STIRS and PERS, and as it turns out, special ed. We do have to have renewed cost containment or measurement or prediction efforts district-wide and with our special ed program. We are going to be meeting with the board's policy subcommittee to look at our non-BUSD after-school programs. That's coming up shortly. And I should also mention we should be looking at the superintendent's budget advisory group that we're going to be regrouping and meeting on that. And then, of course, we'll be bringing back the first interim reporting, which will be our estimate of expenses. We'll be looking at budgets for the period ending December 11th, and we are looking, the measurement date is October 31st. So again, acknowledgments. I listed everybody here. So Antoinette's here. Liz Karam, many of you would know Liz. She works in for the BSEP program and has been with the district for 9 years. And then these are our other budget analysts, 2 and 1, and our account technicians and our executive assistants. So I really want to give a shout out to the team because everybody pulled together to get this done. So are there questions?
Thank you for doing that, for listing all our staff who worked to help compile all that information for us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Directors, questions? Director Hassan.
I just have to say, and I think it's in preparation for this coming year, that cost containment doesn't mean anything if we don't actually have strategies to contain. And there was a big effort, I know, when Director Brown and I came on in the middle of the budget cycle around the cost containment of special ed. And so not only to see that it wasn't contained, but it went up by $2.4 million, basically wipes out any of the cuts, that we made. So I know that this is of heightened awareness and on your radar, but I think we need to have much more accountable, documentation and strategies to say that we just can't, this is not directed at you, but to say that, we just can't track it, it's too hard. There must be some lessons learned that we can learn from other districts on how they're tracking it. There must be something we can do to begin to get a much better handle on this so that when we enter into this next budget cycle, we're realistic about what it is that we can really do.
Correct. So I've actually made, I'm trying to make appointments at 4 different districts to look at how they actually track special ed and record special ed. So I'm going to go to San Leandro. I think I'm going to Vallejo. And I'm also going to be working with Alameda and possibly working with San Francisco or someone who worked in San Francisco. So I need to see how other districts are actually handling this, because everybody's having runaway costs. How do they project? How do they kind of like track the movement of students? And then how do we work closer with the program side so that we're not kind of estimating a number and kind of like, we've been pretty lucky, I think, in the past in that we're unreasonable in terms of projections, but I think costs are going up. And as I explained, we did have 40 more students from December prior year to December this year, but in all, there were like 200 additional students that came in and out of special ed. So I think we just have to have renewed effort in terms of tracking and reporting.
Director Appel?
I was just going to move that we approve the unaudited actuals,
Can I just ask a quick?
but I don't know if there are other questions, yeah.
I'll second it, but then I have a comment. Or it just relates to what Director Sinai said, and I just wonder, because I think as she just said, there's two things. There's the rising costs, and there's also the under projections, or the inaccurate projections, for lack of a better word. And I'm curious whether, we know that the costs have been rising, and I'm curious whether our projections have been getting less accurate for some reason that we could then, look at. So if we looked at page 7 or of the PowerPoint and compared how off we were in the last couple of years, and maybe off the top of your head, or I assume we have the numbers pretty easy.
I think in 16, 17, we saw that was the first year where our actuals actually exceeded our budget. So what we're doing at the first interim, we think we saw that cost went up by 500,000, and we projected that that's the level it would remain at. So we increased the contribution by 500,000. So then unfortunately, it comes to us, well, we're going to need more because here's this other contract. And we track and monitor, but I think we're just kind of reporting after the fact. So I think we want to get out in front of it and present probably more accurate budgeting for the total cost for the year if we, once we work closer with the program side.
That makes sense, thanks. And I think that looking at other districts to
Yeah,
see, to see if
exactly, 'cause
if they're containing costs, but also even if they're not, if they're projecting more accurately, that would be
that would be
something.
helpful for us as well. Yes.
I would also recommend that our auditors who have worked with other school districts in terms of how they track they've seen, because they're out and about and with not just our district, but many districts, that
Right.
what they might recommend. too.
Yeah.
I think whoever goes to CSBA also can talk with other school board members about
That's going to be
strategies.
the big question. So we have a motion by Director Appel, second by Vice President Alpert. All in favor? Aye. Thank you so much for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now, the approval of the GAN resolution.
I'll move that one.
So motion by Vice President Alpert. Have a second? I'll second. Beat you guys to it. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Do we have anything else? Comments? Okay, everybody can go home early. We'll be here late on the 18th, though. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
I didn't mean to, I just know that we've been in all these meetings.
I know, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, can I?
No, but I